My name is Frederic Hanusch and I'm from Marburg in the middle of Germany, and I have a MA in politics, philosophy and sociology from the University in Heidelberg, and I did my PhD at the University Duisburg-Essen, and at the Institute for Advanced Study in Humanities in Essen I was part of a research group, Climate Change and Democracy, and what we did there was to search from different angles how democracy is related to climate change. And this institute is quite interesting because it was one of the first of its kind that saw climate change not only as a natural science phenomenon but as a cultural phenomenon. So there were social scientists, people from the humanities and cultural studies that looked at climate change as something that alters our lifestyles, that probably changes the politics we do, and so on and so forth. And after that, I was part of the German Advisory Council on Global Change that prepares special reports, policy papers, and even larger reports on topics such as urbanization, sustainable development goals, or climate change, and handed over to the federal government. And currently I'm part of the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, and part of a research group called Futurisation of Politics. And we are interested in the question how the future is currently produced, imagined, constructed in societies and in the politics, and whether this is done in a good way or if we could do it probably better, because as we see, especially in context of long-term problems, there might be a better way to represent the future. This year I published a book called Democracy and Climate Change with the Routledge in the Routledge Global Cooperation Series. And this book explores the various ways in which democratic principles alter climate performances. And there are many arguments out there that look at the one side, at the negative effects democracy might have. For example, that there's this short-termism because of elections, that there is cycling issue attention, and so on and so forth. And there are many arguments arguing, well, democracy can deal with climate change, it has done so with many other problems, it is capable of political learning, it is able to enable cooperation also at a global level. We've done that on other issues as well. So I was curious how the difference between democracies themselves turns out in that issue. So why do different democracies have a different climate performance, and what role exactly does democratic quality play in that process? So I did a quantitative analysis around some panel regressions, and they showed actually that more democratic quality actually leads to a better climate performance. And I then turned into a more qualitative analysis where I was interested in the precise mechanisms between certain dimensions like transparency, participation, inclusiveness, accountability on climate performance. And I choose Canada as a case study, Canada's Kyoto Protocol process, for certain reasons. And what appeared there was that Canada wasn't doing so well in terms of democratic quality, but you could see at many points and in many situations that a little bit more democracy, a little bit better structured participation process leading to some consensus, probably some more transparency, more liberty for scientists, especially in the later period during the conservative government, would have helped climate performance to arise. And so you also see these mechanisms in place where you can more or less really see that more democratic quality also at this Canadian case would have led to better climate performance. So my overall message from that book is democratize democracies to solve the climate challenge and don't turn them into something else. When I was doing my interviews in Canada on my book Democracy and Climate Change, one of my interviews partners told me we have to introduce the future to the present in context of climate change because of its long-term effects. And that was the starting point of my current research on time. I'm very much interested in temporal features, like, for example, future generations, acceleration, the synchronization of social and natural rhythms, cyclic and linear ways to deal with time, the past, present, or future orientation of political institutions. And so there are all these different temporal issues, but we don't have a way to think them together. And they are actually very influential. I mean, if you think about the economic growth linear prospects, if you think about the technological rhythms that are very much decoupled from what nature is able to reproduce, and so on and so forth, you see that time plays a crucial role in context of global change. And in context of the spatial issue, we have developed this idea of the cosmopolitan. So a person who is capable to think beyond borders, who should enable a good life for everyone, independent where he or she is born. And I think you should develop the same idea in context of time. So a chronopolite that basically says, independent of the temporal conditions in which you were or will be born, you should have the same possibilities to develop a good life. And I'm figuring out currently what, for example, political institutions of such chronopolitism could be. We have, in terms of cosmopolitanism, the United Nations, and it took quite a lot of time until this idea of the cosmopolitan became reality in such institutions, and whether we shouldn't only have United Nations but also United Times.